Welcome to another episode of Grace Under Pressure. It's a LinkedIn Live interview show that poses questions to thought leaders and doers whose ideas and actions are helping us come to a greater understanding of ourselves and the greater opportunities that await us. Grace Under Pressure reveals what's too often dismissed as the soft stuff. The caring, the connecting, commitment we feel toward others. Grace for me is generosity we show, respect we give, compassion we demonstrate. And doing it as a leader, especially in our challenging times, requires the ability to act for others and energize everyone around us. And it is a particular honor to welcome a friend of mine, Donald Altman, whom I've known for, we figured it out, 36 years now. We met in Los Angeles, and Don's a good friend, but also a licensed psychotherapist and prolific author. So let me tell you a little bit about Don before we talk. Don is an internationally known mindfulness expert, award-winning author of over 14 books, which have been translated into multiple languages. His best-selling The Mindfulness Toolbox won 2 national publishing awards and best books in both psychology and mind, body, spirit categories. 2 other books, Clearing Emotional Clutter and The Mindfulness Code, were chosen as one of the best spiritual books of the year. He's contributed chapters to many other books. He's also past vice president of the Center for Mindful Eating. That's something that I could use. I know that. Don's worked professionally as a senior mental health therapist at an eating disorder and general psychiatric clinic before founding his own clinic. He lives in Portland, Oregon with his lovely wife, Maria. And Don, welcome to Grace Under Pressure.
Hey, John, it's just wonderful to reconnect with you and your audience. You're providing a lot of really important information for people these days, and it's an honor for me to be on your show.
Well, cool. Don, lots of people are feeling tons of pressure right now. So what are you seeing in your practice? What are you hearing and what are you advising, counseling?
Well, what I'm seeing is, I'm not counseling anymore, but I'm training, going out, meeting clinicians, teaching internationally and writing. And what I'm hearing from people, I'm doing a lot of trainings for clinicians, is that what is happening is this remote working. There's a sense of disconnection. Even though we're seeing one another, you and I right now on camera, you're not seeing the entire person. And it's a little different from when you're with someone and picking up the some of the real nuances of communication and sensing that. So, and people are also hearing this tremendous amount of anxiety and worry about the future because we don't know what's going to happen next with COVID, how it's going to morph, how are we going to cope if it reverses or gets worse rather, and also how it's forcing us all to transition our lifestyles in new ways. And the interesting thing is, I think if you're going to be talking about dealing with any kind of severe stress, you have to be aware of the brain and the body and how they react to that. And so our nervous systems want regularity. They want constancy, right? And the thing is, we have deep in the recesses of the brain, it's a structure called the amygdala, and I think of it as a smoke detector in the brain. And so it warns us, and it's there for survival purpose. It's there to help us in times of a perceived threat or when it's something that we need to protect ourselves. And our body will go into this stress response. But we also need to know how to calm that response down so we're not always on high alert, because when you're on high alert like that, it impacts us. It changes hundreds of biological processes, and it actually even dampens our immune system response. So it makes us more vulnerable, perhaps, to things like COVID-19.
So you give us one more thing to worry about, Don. Yeah. Talk about
the people. So.
No, it's interesting, and I love the way you're blending the cognitive, the spiritual, as well as the body. But let's focus on the body, because I think so many of us live in our our cognitive realm. We're knowledge workers. Why is it we forget our body? So.
Well, you're absolutely right. We're very much a mental culture, and it's easy to get stuck up here. In fact, there's research that shows that about 50% of the times our minds wander and just start spinning stories. And many of those are even distressing stories, just randomly. And what happens is if we're not aware of this mind wandering, and often the problem with mind wandering is that it often goes into rumination and anxiety. Now, you could mind wander about something pleasant. That's not going to have a negative effect on you. But much of our mind wandering is a form of rumination and worry. And so we lose contact with the body when we're doing that. And but just that worry, again, puts our body on high alert. And that's why mindfulness is so nice. It really allows us to shift awareness back to this moment right here and now, where I can look around and say, oh, wait, you know what? Things are okay here. I'm doing the best I can. I'm problem solving, how to work around COVID. And you can bring a sense of resilience into your life through enhancing your awareness.
Right. You have written, and I know you teach it. Tell us about the pause. That's such a simple thing, but can be so effective. And I think particularly now, am I correct?
Yeah. Well, I wrote a book called Reflect, which is Awaken to the Wisdom of the Here and Now, which has 108 different reflect meditations. And we have a very important part of the brain right here behind the eyebrow ridge. I call it the reflect and relate module of the brain. And it's the most human part of our brains. It allows us to pause. You talked about pausing, to pause, to not be reactive, but to look within, notice our thoughts, right? This part of the brain is also relational, so it helps us connect with others. And in fact, maybe I could read something from...
Absolutely, please do.
Simply Mindful. This is my newest book, and it's kind of a roadmap that takes people through developing a mindfulness practice and applying it. It's filled with skills, applying it into your life, your relationships, your workplace. But I have a chapter here on reflection and the power of pause, and just pausing for a minute or two to reflect throughout the day recollects your fragmented parts so you can know the truth and wholeness of presence. So we get distracted, we get drawn by different pop-up windows on our computers and so forth, and we feel fragmented, we get exhausted. And how reflection can actually help us kind of reclaim. And that's the original meaning of mindfulness. Actually, it means to remember and recollect, self-remember ourselves, kind of like bring our wholeness back. Interestingly, reflection is the opposite of trying. As a deep penetrating awareness, its purpose is precisely to help us go beyond traditional forms of thinking. Don't be surprised if you gain fresh insights, creative solutions, and new awareness to relationships and your work. So it's not so much what you reflect on, but how you bring a fresh and abiding awareness to any area of your life that matters.
It's that's very eloquent, and thank you for sharing it. And part of the pause, it's simple to do. And do you not advocate sometimes just standing up and walking away from your desk or getting outside or something like that?
Yeah, I think that is a wonderful practice in and of itself. It's interesting. Even the Jesuits had something they called fidelity to the moment, which was how you could just be faithful to this moment. So standing up, going and look at nature, and nature actually has been scientifically proven to calm the brain, and it creates something that researchers have found they call involuntary attention, which means it pulls us in, it engages us, and it actually restores our ability to concentrate again. So if you're feeling burned out, and I have often had students, people working on deadlines and feeling a lot of pressure, to just take a 5-minute or even a 3-minute break, just look at nature, let yourself get engaged and pulled in by it, and that will restore depleted mental energy. It's a great and you don't need to do take any other medicine. Vitamin N, nature.
That's great. So, and let me push back or ask you. So, all sounds great, and it's anything that rooted in Jesuit practice, I'm all for. Of listeners know I have 8 years of Jesuit education, so whatever. But so, what about city dwellers? I mean, if you're in a major city where there isn't ready available, how can you find nature there, Don?
Well, yeah, we can just look up at the sky, right? You just look up at the horizon, or look at have some screenshots on your computer of nature that come up, right? I think there are a lot of ways that we can do. Have a plant indoors that you can pause and look at.
No,
Uh,
and that's
yeah,
good. I mean, it sounds kind of, I wanted to be specific on it because, we all need something right now to help us reduce the stress. I just did an interview where my colleague talked about like something like 40 or 30% of Americans are actually suffering a form of clinical anxiety. So we're all feeling tough stuff now. So, and I wanted to get back to
yeah.
something you said earlier about virtual versus physicality. Is there a way to replace that now that we're in isolation? Do you know of any way? Or
What I would try to do is to try to have some personal contact, even if you're socially distanced, where you could just talk to somebody. Around the neighborhood where I live here, my wife and I went out walking the other day, and there were other people walking. They were on the opposite side of the street, but
yeah,
we just paused and talked with them a little bit, asked them about their dogs or how they're doing. And so we had some contact with somebody, and I think it's important that we make an effort to somehow bridge the remote world,
right.
right?
And not to be silly about it, but let's say we're socially distanced, 6 feet apart, and doing this. And I know I participate this, and a lot of my friends. We have a virtual cocktail party, or we have virtual cocktail parties, but we also have socially distant gatherings where everybody. So if you're 6 feet apart, it's still different than virtual. Are you saying that,
Well,
Don?
it is. And, this, in the first 10 to 24 months of our lives, this part of the brain wires up through our connection with caregivers, but it continues to wire up.
Yeah.
And so just when you're looking at somebody, it's different from a computer, which can be interesting, but this part of the brain wires up from that face-to-face connection. Even if you're wearing a mask, still uh, you have that closeness. Or meet somebody, meet a friend in the backyard, and distance your chairs away,
Yeah.
and that's a wonderful way to just get connected. I also wanted to mention the breath, because you said, what else can somebody do? And something very profound actually is how our breath can rewire our response, rewire that what's the sympathetic, the nervous system, that arousal, negative fight flight system, and turn on the relaxation response in the body. Is a nice long belly breath, getting the breath into the diaphragm. And even just a few breaths will almost instantly slow everything down, slows your blood pressure, pulse rate, respiration. So I would recommend just in fact, we could do that right now. One
Yeah.
way to get that deeper breath is just to place your arms, clasp your hands behind your back for a moment. And you may want to scoot up in your chair to do that, or stand up and do this. And just take some breath and just notice the breath. See if it's going a little deeper down. And what's happening when you're moving your arms back here, you're actually stretching muscles in the chest, which are the intercostal muscles. And when it hinges the ribs open, it just makes it easier to get that longer, deeper breath. And if you're getting lightheaded at all, you're probably taking too deep a breath. So it's just a normal breath, but we don't want you fainting on camera, John.
No. John, when I do these breathing exercises, it
Notice
makes
that.
me feel centered. Um, Physicality. Do you want to comment on that? So,
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, think about it. When you take a nice breath, you're dropping into the body. And when you drop into the body, it slows that spinning of stories that I talked about. Okay. And so it gets you very, very present. I have another practice, and which is just bringing your palms together very slowly. I call it palm the present moment. And so notice, first of all, if there's any heat between the palms. Bring your palms slowly closer until your fingertips touch. And you can do this in just a minute and then slowly bring your palms together. But as you do this, I want you to notice how the fingers straighten out, how the wrist changes position. Is there more heat building up as the palms get closer? And then we're going to press, raise your elbows up out to the side. We're going to put a little progressive muscle relaxation practice here. Press for a few seconds and then let the shoulders and elbows come down. And feel how nice it is just to let go of that tension. Then we can open the palms up again. And so it's just a very simple practice, but you may have noticed while you were doing that, you didn't have a lot of thoughts.
No.
That's the beauty of it. And we can just do this for a few seconds and then just even breathe in to where there's any remaining tension in the body and exhale it out. You can visualize that tension, tightness, even negativity or anxiety, just draining out of the body as you exhale it out, down the bottom of the feet and back into the earth for recycling.
And I love that because it's, again, since we are knowledge workers, we live in our cognitive realm. This exercise reconnects us to our physicality, which is our humanity. So
yeah.
Good exercise. You want to take us through another exercise, a mindfulness meditation. Am I correct? So.
Yeah. This is a nice three-part. I call it the three-part stress detox, and actually, it's in chapter 1 of the Simply Mindful book, and it's a very simple practice to get us embodied, but also to release stress. And so it's a nice 3-minute break. If you can, sit out in nature and do it. If not, just do it at home. So the first minute of this is just connecting with the body. So I want you to feel how you're supported. Sometimes we forget how many things support us in life. And so I want you to feel the chair beneath you, supporting you, how the ground is supporting your feet. I want you to notice also, conversely, how maybe you're connected or rooted to the ground. Think of your favorite tree or plant, feeling rooted, connected. Notice the positioning of your legs, your knees, your arms, your hands, even your posture. It's nice to have a nice upright, relaxed, but poised and erect posture. And just come into the presence of the body, a wonderful gift that we all possess. Now for the next minute, we can just be aware of the breath. And the nice thing about this, we don't need to change anything. I just want you to notice the breath, maybe the in-breath, the pause, the out-breath. And notice if there's a longer breath, just be aware, oh, this is a longer breath. If there's a shorter breath, just notice, oh, this is a shorter breath than the one that came before. And even allow yourself to be breathed by the breath rather than you doing anything, right? Just allow the breath to breathe through you. Just notice the rhythm. Natural breathing is how I like to call it, natural breathing. It's perfect just as it is. And now for the third minute, so we've connected with the body in the first minute, we connected with the breath in the second minute. For the third minute, we're going to inhale in and picture either in through the nostrils or the crown of the head. The breath is a white light coming to any part of the body where there's remaining tension, tightness, or negativity. And we're going to exhale it out, letting the breath do it, letting the breath carry it away, down the body and out, down through the feet and back into the earth. And with each exhale, you can feel the body relax a little bit more, let go a little bit more. And then, so that's it, a 3-minute meditation like that. And if you wanted to add on something that I think is a very heart-centered practice, is to add in a word for yourself. When you're breathing in on the last part of the meditation, breathe in, and you could breathe in the word safe or love or acceptance or forgiveness. May I be forgiven. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be healthy. And then when you exhale it out, say that for others. May all others be happy. May all others be safe. And so it's been actually scientifically shown that these words, certain words are priming words. They prime us for feelings of calm, trust, safety, and they actually help us connect with others and they overcome fear. So think about how beautiful it is. We can breathe in one word for ourselves, choose whatever word feels right for you, and then exhale it out and extend it to others. So it's kind of a form of a loving kindness meditation when you do that.
That's great. It's an enriching experience. I feel lighter,
Great.
less burdened, and I'll just float away in this interview. But got to remember to turn it off.
Well,
Stop.
I think we need to find ways to, in a time such as now, when things seem very harsh and and coarse and rough in our lives, all around the edges, and we need to create a sense of tenderness inside, create an understanding that we're all going through this, we're all suffering in some way from this, and so we need to not just look at the differences, but the beauty that is in all of us, and try to cultivate bridges of understanding. So that's the deeper level.
Yeah, I have a question that I'd like to ask guests about what makes us human. And I think actually you've been expounding on this for the last 20 minutes. So do you have a further comment about our humanness, our humanity, our connectedness to others?
Yeah, and I think that it is that connectedness. It's the ability to go beyond the idea of the separateness between, and to recognize, to pull the veil up from that and see, hey, I'm really connected to this person. I may not even know this person in the grocery store that I see, or other people, but we are fundamentally connected. You know, it's like the trees in the forest. They're connected, um, actually, and so in the same way, we could recognize that connection and look at some way to uh, provide something for another, something of benefit
Mhm.
for another person, and that opportunity is always there. You know, all our wisdom traditions use the idea of charity or giving or
Sure.
altruism, and how can we find in that spontaneous moment some way to offer something of ourselves to another. I think of it as lighting another's candle.
Oh, that's great.
Right?
Interesting you mentioned, because this is a reflective exercise, but a physically reflective exercise, I might say. But then you've broadened it a little bit to talk about our connectedness. So, is it when you go into an exercise like this, should we be thinking about anything specifically, Don? Or
Well, I think I think maybe it stems out of this idea of gratitude for what we have, and gratitude is like this well, or a fountain that keeps coming up with this regenerative water. And so we drink from that water when we give to another, and we're giving them a cup of that water as well. So it's a way of I call it mental jujitsu. It kind of flips negativity on its head and lets us see things in a fresh new way.
I'm glad you mentioned that because how do you have any techniques about turning negative thoughts into positive ones to prevent rumination? So,
Oh yeah. Well, and I think gratitude would be a good way to do that, is to cultivate a practice of starting to notice. There are 5 different things basically that I talk about that you could be grateful for. There's the um, basic gratitude, just having a roof over your head, water, warmth from the sun, things without which life might not even be possible. Then there's personal gratitude, that you have a livelihood, you have health, you have transportation, things that actually help you move along in your own life. There are ordinary gratitudes. I think of those, just the little things that we sometimes don't notice, that we take for granted. The fact that we're able to connect remotely, like we are right now. That, maybe that's kind of an extraordinary thing, but it's kind of an ordinary gratitude for many of us. Or just the fact that you can give somebody a smile, or you can show a kindness. Those are ordinary gratitudes. Then there's relational gratitudes, all the relational connections in our life that that we can draw upon, that give us resources, and vice versa, that we can provide, be a resource for others. And then there's even paradoxical gratitude. This is having gratitude for the things you wish you didn't have in your life. And I think COVID might be a paradoxical gratitude, but paradoxically, it has forced us to slow down. And I think it is giving us an opportunity to reassess certain things in our lives, what's important to us, and how we can find, connect more with our purpose and our meaning and connect with others. So there's a great opportunity in that, even in those paradoxical gratitudes.
One of the things, many of the interviews I do, I focus on leadership quotient, and I always talk about leaders. The challenge is making a positive difference in the lives of others. And what you've done over this last 25 minutes or so is talk, especially with gratitude, talk about positive actions we can do for others. You have an additional thought you want to share about positivity toward others?
Yeah, well, I think for one thing, I think the practice of reflection, maybe to wrap up with what we were talking when we first started this interview, is that when we reflect, we're able to be receptive to others. We're able to get clarity, right? So we're not just being reactive as a leader to what we're hearing, but we're able to really incorporate, be receptive, be open, have fresh insights, and connect with empathy with others. And so it really can change the flavor of the culture of an organization when leaders start doing that.
Oh, it's when empathy is the kind of the catchword of our times, but we need to act on empathy. Is that correct, Don? So,
Oh yeah, yeah. We need to act on it. We allow our and that's what the pause and reflecting allows us to do. Allows us to connect with it, to really take the time to create the space to connect and say, oh wait, what is this person, what are they experiencing here? How can I understand them better?
right. We're coming to a close here, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about grace and examples you have in your own life, or that you want to share your story of grace. So.
Well, it was interesting. I was going to a workshop in Cleveland, and inclement weather. I was a connecting flight in Cincinnati, and our flight to Cleveland got canceled. I was doing a workshop the next morning, and airport was shut down. There were a couple of guys in line in front of me, and they were the last ones where they said, "Well, we can't get you on a flight," and they turned to me and they said, where are you going? I said, well, I'm going to Cleveland. I got a workshop. And they said, oh, we do workshops. And they were in a completely different field, but they said, we've rented a car. Why don't you come with us? So it was kind of like a planes, trains, automobile kind of.
I was just thinking about that. Yeah. I'm glad
but we drove, hours and past midnight, got into Cleveland. But it was a really interesting way that they had it was a wonderful expression of grace on their part to offer that to me. And
oh, that's such a great story. Our viewers don't know, but Don and I originally connected in Los Angeles because Don was a nascent writer in Hollywood, and I was a former wannabe writer, but we connected over humor, and whenever we get together, we laugh. So I love that mention of planes, trains, and automobiles. So, because we both love the Dear John candy, do we not? So,
oh, yeah, very much.
Anyway, Don, it's been great. How can people find you?
So, you can go to my website, which is mindfulpractices.com, MINDFUL practices.com. I have a newsletter. If you go to there's a menu button that says subscribe, you can sign up for my newsletter. And I also have a community on Facebook. So you can find that on the homepage of mindfulpractices.com as well. Yeah.
Thank you. It's Donald Altman and if Mindful Practices, and you can also Google him because I know he comes up thousands of times. You'll be able to find him. Don, this has been terrific, and we're going to do our outro. And I say thank you. I am grateful for you.
Well, I enjoyed it. Thanks, John.